I did a video a while ago about how to zero an air rifle scope tutorial, and it became incredibly popular. It's my most viewed video, and I've had requests as well to do one on crossbows. And because I was getting such good accuracy out of this crossbow when I used it a week ago or 2 weeks ago with the scope I'd zeroed for it, I thought I'd give you a tutorial on how I'd done it. Now there's a few things to bear in mind before we get onto this. Firstly, this is an air rifle scope I have on this crossbow. If you were to get a crossbow scope, you'd get much better results. Because it's an air rifle scope, it can't be zeroed properly for a crossbow. Yeah, I've managed to get it zeroed quite well for carbon fibre bolts. So if you're using a crossbow scope, it's going to be inherently better for this. And I'm also going to be using carbon fibre bolts, such as these. An important thing to bear in mind with carbon fibre bolts, they're good for zeroing a crossbow because they don't bend, so that's not going to throw your accuracy off. And the fletchings on these seem a bit tougher than on my sort of aluminium bolts. And another thing to bear in mind when you're zeroing a crossbow is there's a lot of things that can give you outliers. Firstly, if you don't cock the crossbow properly and the string's pulled more to one side than the other, that's going to throw the bolt off horizontally. If your bolt's slightly bent, that's going to throw the bolt off slightly. And if the fletchings are damaged on the bolt, that's going to throw it off slightly. And also bear in mind, once you've zeroed it for one type of bolts, because different brands of bolts and different lengths of bolts and then the material of bolts all weigh different things, different lengths, that's going to be different on the groupings. So find a bolt you like using, zero it for that, and then you'll probably get quite accurate results of the other bolts, but they won't be pinpoint unless you zero it for obviously the exact type of bolt you're using. So let's get started. Now the scope on the crossbow should be zeroed pretty well, so I'm going to be aiming for that little yellow dot on the boss, and hopefully the bolt should get quite close to it. If there's an error on this part, it's going to be because I haven't done a cheek weld properly of the scope, because I've had enough good groupings this to know the scope zeroed. So let's see how we go. And it went ever so slightly high to the left, but that's pretty damn close still. So now let me explain how you zero one of these scopes if it's not zeroed. Now on an air rifle scope or a crossbow scope or whatever rifle scope, you have two dials that you need to adjust, and they're under these caps. And what these dials are is one's elevation, one's windage, or basically horizontal and vertical targeting. And what you need to do is you need to adjust the scope to where the bolt has essentially gone. So what we have here is one we can adjust up and one we can adjust to either the left or the right on the other side. Now I'm blaming my own accuracy for this, but if we were to say that the bolts were always going there, even if we had it shooting, you know, we say we shot 5 bolts and all of them have gone slightly high to the left of where that target bit was, what we'd have to do is adjust the actual crosshair on the scope to get to the position the bolts are going. So then for when we aim again, once it's been zeroed, the bolts will go to where the scope's actual crosshair is, which will be where the bolts really want to go. So say for example we want to get back to where these were, what we do is we'd adjust the scope up slightly, and I've fully got that adjusted up so I can't do that I'm afraid for the purposes of the video, but we'd adjust that up a few clicks, then we'd adjust this one left a few clicks, which I've already fully done. But basically that would be how you do it. So you'd put it left a few and up a few if the bolt's going up to the left. If the bolt was going right and up, you'd put the scope a few clicks up and a few clicks to the right. If it was going down to the right, you'd adjust it down and to the right, and so on. And basically what you want to do is get the crosshair on the scope into the position the bolts are actually going, not what you're aiming at. Now there are a few scopes that make this a bit more complicated, because there are some scopes where if you had the bolt going to the left, you would actually adjust the scope to the right. But basically in your scope's manual it should explain zeroing, and the normal zeroing is you adjust with the scope to where the bolts are actually going, not where you're aiming it. So once you've got the scope zeroed, you shoot another bolt, you see where that's going. If it's going near the target or on the target, you're right, and if it's not going on target, you want to shoot a few more bolts and you want to see how close they are and adjust it as need be. Then I'd say within 20 minutes you can get the scope actually zeroed. This didn't take very long to zero at all when I did it the first time, probably half an hour at most, and I've made a few adjustments since then and it's very good. One thing you want to do is make sure the windage is correct, which is basically your horizontal aiming, and with the vertical aiming you want to adjust it to be shooting accurately at the range you're using the crossbow. So the target here is about 11 yards away, and this is where I'm going to be shooting it from on the rest. Also, another thing that people point out is that if you have this rested on a sandbag, you're going to get slightly better accuracy, but for the purposes of this video I didn't need to do that. So what we've done is, say we've zeroed it for 11 yards because that's the range you shoot at. Then if you're shooting at a closer range, you want to aim slightly below the target. If you're aiming further away, you want to aim slightly above the target. Purpose-built crossbow scopes actually have breakdowns on the scope, so you can sort of get range adjusters for various ranges. On this air rifle scope it doesn't do that. But basically get the horizontal and vertical accuracy for the distance you're shooting at, and then if you're shooting further away you can just manually aim higher or lower depending on the range. What you don't want to be doing is trying to re-zero the height every time you're using the scope, because it's impractical. You can work it out very easily once you've got the scope zeroed for the range you're firing at. So we'll put another bolt into the target to test that the zeroing's actually tight. I'll aim for the green section again, and hopefully we can get the bolt very close to it. That bolt went a bit further out to the left, but the distance between the two bolts is still very close. And I think that one went almost exactly on target. Let's have a look. Well, these two bolts went very close together. As you can see, literally less than a centimetre apart from each other. So we can see that the scope's actually holding a good group. If anything, I'd need to zero the scope up and left slightly, but it would only be by a very fraction of a small amount. So if I was to adjust the scope, I'd put it up a bit and I'd put it to the left a bit, and then it would be exactly where the crosshair is. Unfortunately, because I'm using an air rifle scope, it won't go that far, so I've got it the furthest it will go. So what I'll have to do is instead aim slightly down and slightly to the right of this range. But if you've got a proper crossbow scope, this wouldn't be a problem in the first place. And also another important thing to bear in mind is that some scopes won't be able to withstand crossbow recoil properly, so make sure you get a shockproof scope. And another thing is that the draw weight of the crossbow and the sort of length of the draw, the power draw, might affect this as well. But this tutorial should cover you for the majority of crossbows and how to set them up. Hopefully it's been useful for you.